We've already presented a large couch repair on this channel, but this repair will demonstrate the effectiveness of modern repair methods on a curved panel. Let's do it. I always have to pay someone to help me pick up a couch initially, but once it's loaded in the van, I don't have to lift it. I don't have to lift any furniture because the table slides up right at the right height for the floor of the van. And since a lot of furniture is wider than the table, I've made the wider slider. That's right, folks, you saw it for the first time right here on A.R.T. TV. The wider slider, a channel that you can put the legs of the furniture in, and you can slide it even if it hangs off the table. That can be yours for 3 easy installments of $19.99. I'm always finding a use for the scrap lumber in the shop anyway, so when I run out, I have to start a new project. So this way I'm able to handle the heavy furniture all by myself. It's a matter of working smarter, not harder, right? Nothing to it, just like puffed wheat. So now the other end is lined up and we're ready to go. Then once it's loaded, we have some sliders on the feet here, so we can move it about the shop. No problem. So there are 3 key elements that need to be addressed. The foam is cut and poking out, the leather is loose, and we have the curved contour of the panel. First of all, I've prepared the light base coat and the dark top coat. Now, I also reserve the right to be able to add some black to that top coat as needed, or to mix the 2 colors for an overall blend if that works. Just to give myself a little bit more working room on here, I'm going to pry out these furniture nails and get this end cap out away from the leather I'm going to be working on. It'll give me just a little extra room there to tie that corner in. So what are we going to do about the foam? Absolutely nothing. The baseball stitch will take care of that. What are we going to do about the leather being loose? Nothing. The baseball stitch will take care of that. And what about getting that proper contour on our repair? We're not going to do anything about that either, because the baseball stitch will take care of that. To get started with our baseball stitch, however, we're going to anchor this point securely. That way the leather is held in place and it makes it much easier to do the baseball stitch. And then we'll just do 1 leg at a time on either side. All I'm going to do here is pull everything snug, make a square knot, and then leave the tails hang until later, where I will tuck them underneath the leather. Now if you want to, you can take a leather pen and mark where your stitch holes are going to be. This helps line everything up and just makes for a neater repair. Then, of course, I start with the needle coming up at the end, and I'm already sensing that this leather is going to give me some difficulty. It's really hanging on to the needle to make the penetration a little bit difficult. So I've grabbed another very sharp and a little bit heftier needle to pre-punch the holes. So it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And so as you're going through this repair with me, we're finding out at the same time that this leather is giving us a bit of resistance. And you wouldn't think so because it's kind of thin. You would think that'd be easy, but certain leathers just seem to put a real grip on the needle and give a lot of resistance. So for the baseball stitch, I usually start with a needle coming up on either side, just past the length of the damage, and then we make an X. And every time we make an X, we come up. So we're crossing and coming up through our pre-punched hole. And because I put the white lines there, the lines help me to find the pre-punch hole as well. So that serves two purposes. And since that white leather pen rubs off so easily, what we're going to do is just make a few white lines in advance and no more. Use them to locate the correct position for our pre-punch holes, and then the lines help us to find the holes later as we're crossing and coming up. And so since this is repetitive, we're going to speed this up and get on to the next steps. To finish off this leg, I don't want to put the knot on top of the leather, so what I'm doing is I'm swapping holes on the end. I'm putting the right thread over into the existing hole on the left side. And then I'm going to take the left thread and put it into the existing hole on the right side. And then we'll tie the knot further back where it can be tucked in to that tear. So quite often I'll go back and snug up the threads along the way and just make sure that the leather is mating up properly. And then at the very end where I did the crossover, the straight crossover, I'll pull that up and grab a hold of that and snug up the whole line. I don't want to pull it too tight. In fact, already I'm putting some lines in the leather, you can see. I really don't think I can avoid that, but you don't really need to pull it too tight, but I just pull all the slack out of it that way, and then I can pull here and snug it up and then make a square knot. And after the square knot, we'll just put those threads on a needle and bury those tails down in the cushion, out of the way of the knot, and then we'll trim it. And of course, the second leg we're going to handle exactly the same way, so we'll speed through here down to the end of it. By the way, using the heavier gauge hand sewing thread here serves a great advantage. Its heavier weight ensures that it's not going to slice through the leather like a very thin thread might. And certainly for tensile strength, you're not going to break it. So as we are finishing up the baseball stitch, you can see how that we met our objectives. The foam is now compressed, and the leather is just as tight as it was the day that it was stretched around and stapled. And it follows the contour of the panel perfectly. Now, as I'm prepping this area, I'm expecting to take some of the top coat color off. That's quite typical, and that's not bothering anything here. We're repairing over this area anyway. But just so that you can see, this is an alcohol prep, and it is taking some of the color. And now we've moved right on to our surface repair. I have colored the repair compound with our dye. That's the light base coat in there. And we're doing just a small amount at a time. I want to work on an area not much larger than the iron itself. That way I have really a lot of control. And I think that's very critical in putting the good end result here, is just a small spot at a time. Now initially, the iron has just been turned on and you don't know if it's hot enough yet. Usually the first installment here, it's not quite hot enough yet, but that's okay. That's better than being too hot, right? So by the time you go to your second area of repair, the iron is heated up just a little bit more, just quite typically. So we're getting a little better feel for this one as far as how hot the iron is. How long can we leave it on the paper? What is our dwell time? We'll get a feel for that. If the paper browns too quickly, then the iron is too hot, and that prevents us from leaving it there dwelling long enough to cure down through the repair compound. But if you can leave the iron on the paper for, say, 15 seconds or so before it starts to brown the paper, that's a good temperature indicator right there. This is why I like to use the paper. It's the only thing that you can use that gives you a visual on how much heat you have. If it toasts the paper a little bit after 15 or 20 seconds, that's pretty good. If the paper starts to toast after 2 seconds, then it's too hot. You've burned the paper, but you haven't cured what's underneath it yet. So here I'm just taking a little bit at a time, not getting too wild with it, not getting too wide on the repair, just blending it in. And what this is also doing, it's ironing out the stitch. It's flattening the stitch so that it won't be visible. Now, if we were to use the heat gun and graining pad method, then typically what happens is the stitch pushes back and tries to come to the surface of the vinyl repair compound and leaves sort of a herringbone looking design in there. We're going to show that in a marine vinyl repair sometime in the future, I think, just to show you how that works. But here, for this furniture, we're going to use the ironing method, which will iron all those stitches flat. Just a little at a time here, easy as she goes, right? And so we can just speed up a little bit as we do the next leg. Here's when I was really glad I gave myself that extra room right up underneath those furniture nails. I'm actually able to extend the repair underneath that end panel. So as we go along here, I think you can see how advantageous it is to do a little bit at a time and keep us really neat on the repair. Every short section is nice and flat. Of course, the foam is putting outward pressure to ensure that our repair is also curved. And now, of course, removing any residue plasticizer or any compound that's not cured. And we're ready for dabbing on some color. So far, so good. Now, a couple of the dabs didn't make it in because of the memory card being full, but my videographer wasn't paying attention. He was too busy working. Now, in addition to dabbing the color, you can spritz a little on. I'm doing it here with the Preval just to make a blend. The advantage of the Preval is that it's not very finely atomized, and so you will still get some contrasting spots of color to add to that overall dimension there in the finish. Now I've noticed that this couch appears to have a solvent clear finish. It really feels like it to me, and so that's what I'm putting on here. I'm putting on a nitrocellulose clear, and that really mimics the clear that's on there already. Gives it the perfect feel, the perfect touch. Of course, got to put those nails home. The customer also pointed out a couple of places where there was some color rubbed. So we're going to just do those touch-ups before taking it back. And as a suggestion, take the color with you to the customer in case you brush it up against the door and do another one of these rub-throughs. And if you've endured all the way to the end of this video, you get to play the game, Find the Repair. I'm going to poke this through so that you can see the difference, if there is any, between the repair area and the leather. So we see these crick lines. And look how the crick lines extend out from where I'm pressing, and follow them through the repair area. And don't forget to order the wider slider. Fake product not available anywhere. All payments non-refundable.